I had just settled into my usual spot on the couch, the faint hum of the television filling the silence of my home, when the doorbell rang. It was not an unusual sound, but somehow, it felt like a jolt, pulling me from the cocoon of my thoughts. I opened the door to find Ethan standing there, tools in hand, a grin on his face that made my heart race in a way I hadn't felt in years. "Hey, Clara. Your TV is acting up again," he asked, his voice warm and inviting. "Yeah, it's been flickering," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. As he stepped inside, I felt a wave of discomfort wash over me. Why was I so uneasy? This was just a simple task, yet the air felt electric. I could see it in his eyes, the way they sparkled with a hint of mischief and charm. It was annoying how quickly I felt that familiar flutter in my stomach. Ethan moved toward the living room, and I followed him, my mind racing. I had known him for years, but today he seemed different. There was something in the way he carried himself, a confidence that drew me in. I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror, hair pulled back, sweatpants, and a faded t-shirt. How did I let myself go so much? Did he even notice? As he knelt down to examine the TV, I bit my lip, watching him work. The tension was palpable, it wrapped around us, thick and suffocating. I realized, in that moment, how much I missed real connection. My marriage to Mark had turned into a series of monotone conversations and routine. I felt like a ghost in my own life, drifting through the days without purpose. But here was Ethan, with his easy smile and effortless charm, bringing back a warmth I thought I had forgotten. "Got any plans for the weekend?" he asked, breaking the silence. I could have easily brushed it off, but instead, I found myself leaning against the wall, crossing my arms as I considered his question. "Just the usual," I said, trying to sound indifferent. "Maybe some laundry, maybe binge watch a show." He chuckled softly, looking up at me. "Sounds exciting," he teased. I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. Why was I blushing? Was it the way he looked at me, or was it something deeper, something I had buried beneath the weight of my marriage? Our eyes met, and time seemed to freeze. For a split second, I was lost in his gaze, and I felt something awaken within me, a feeling I thought I had buried long ago. Longing. The kind of longing that made my heart race and my palms sweat. I quickly looked away, breaking the spell. What was happening? Why did I feel this way? I wrestled with my internal conflict, feeling both drawn to him and guilty for even thinking about it. I had a husband. I had a life. Yet, here was Ethan, lighting a fire within me that had long been extinguished. How could I feel this way about my brother-in-law? Wasn't this wrong? "Everything seems fine now," he said, standing up and brushing his hands on his jeans. I could see the satisfaction in his eyes as he smiled at me. "Can't believe it was just a loose wire." "Yeah, I guess," I murmured, my mind still racing. Was I really going to let this moment slip away? The desire to connect, to feel seen and wanted, was overwhelming. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering between what was right and what felt good. "Clara?" Ethan's voice pulled me back. "You okay?" "Just thinking," I replied, forcing a smile. But the truth was, I was grappling with my own desires, wrestling with the implications of my growing attraction to him. How could I let this happen? What would it mean for my marriage? As he walked toward the door, I realized that this ordinary moment had become anything but ordinary. I was left with questions swirling in my mind, wondering how I had let my life become so mundane and if I could dare to reach for something more. As I sat on the couch, staring at the now quiet TV, my mind drifted back to the early days of my marriage with Mark. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter that used to fill our home, the joyful moments that seemed so far away now. Back then, our evenings were filled with playful banter, spontaneous movie nights, and dreams that felt limitless. I remember how we would talk for hours, sharing our hopes, our fears, and our plans for the future. "Do you remember that time we tried to cook dinner together?" I chuckled to myself, recalling the chaotic scene where we ended up ordering pizza because we burned everything. Mark had laughed so hard he nearly cried, and in that moment, I felt so alive. Love had wrapped around us like a warm blanket. But as time went on, that warmth faded. The laughter grew quiet, replaced by a heavy silence. Mark became absorbed in work, spending late nights at the office, and I found myself drifting into routines that felt empty. I would often sit alone, watching the same shows over and over, feeling the walls of our home closing in on me. "Clara, we need to focus on our careers," Mark would say when I tried to bring up my dreams. "It's not the right time." At first, I understood. I wanted to support him. But slowly, I began to lose sight of my own ambitions. I felt like a shadow of the person I used to be, just a caretaker of our home, while my own dreams slipped away unnoticed. Maybe I should have fought harder, I whispered to myself, feeling the sting of regret. I had once wanted to write, to explore the world, to make a difference. But those dreams had faded, buried beneath the weight of daily life and unspoken expectations. I felt isolated, like I was living in a cage of my own making. Then came Ethan. The way he spoke, the way he listened, it was as if he saw me, truly saw me, in a way I hadn't felt in years. Every time we met, I felt a spark of excitement, a flicker of hope that maybe there was more to life than this routine. Each interaction with him chipped away at the walls I had built around my heart. "Why do I feel this way?" I murmured, letting my thoughts tumble out. My heart raced with confusion. I wanted to be loyal to Mark, but how could I ignore the growing emptiness inside me? Ethan's charm had awakened something deep within, a need for connection that I thought I had buried long ago. I began to question my marriage. Am I really happy? I asked myself. I thought about the quiet dinners, the evenings spent alone while Mark worked late, and the lack of deep conversations that once filled our home. I felt like I was drifting further away from the man I had promised to love. "Clara?" Mark's voice echoed in my mind, pulling me back to reality. "Are you okay?" "Just thinking about the weekend," I lied, avoiding his gaze. I didn't want to admit that I was lost in memories of a time when love felt effortless. I could sense the distance between us growing, and it scared me. With every encounter I had with Ethan, I felt more alive but also more guilty. The laughter and warmth I craved were right there, yet I knew it was wrong to pursue them with someone else. It was like standing at a crossroads, unsure which path to take. I remembered the moment Ethan had looked into my eyes, and how that simple gaze had ignited something within me. I had felt seen, desired, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I mattered. But what would that mean for my marriage? Could I really allow myself to feel this way? As I reflected on my life, I realized that my emotional needs were not being met. I felt an ache in my chest, a longing for something more. I questioned if my marriage could survive the truth of what I was feeling. The laughter, the love, the dreams I once held close, all felt like distant memories, and I wondered if they were gone for good. "Clara, you deserve happiness," I whispered to myself, feeling the heat of tears in my eyes. Could I dare to seek it, even if it meant facing the truth about my marriage? The thought was terrifying, yet somehow freeing. I had to confront what lay ahead, even if it meant taking a leap into the unknown. The first time I met Ethan in secret, my heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. We agreed to meet at a small cafe, a cozy spot where no one would know us. The moment I walked in and saw him seated at a corner table, my breath caught in my throat. He looked up and smiled, and it was like a spark ignited inside me. I had forgotten how good it felt to be seen. "Hey, Clara." "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Thanks for inviting me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. But inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions. I knew this was wrong, yet I couldn't help but feel alive. As we talked, I found myself laughing easily, something I hadn't done in ages. We shared stories, and for those brief moments, I felt like I was floating. But with each laugh, a wave of guilt washed over me. What was I doing? I was betraying Mark, even if it was just with my heart. Do you ever wish you could just escape? Ethan asked, leaning in closer. His eyes held a depth that made me feel vulnerable. Sometimes, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I feel trapped in my own life. The confession slipped out before I could stop it. I wanted to take it back, but it felt good to say it. Clara, Ethan said softly, reaching across the table to touch my hand. His fingers brushed against mine, sending a jolt of electricity through me. You deserve to be happy. Happiness. The word echoed in my mind, a stark contrast to the emptiness I had felt for so long. But as I looked into his eyes, I felt a thrill that was hard to ignore. Each stolen moment with him blurred the lines of right and wrong. As the days turned into weeks, our secret meetings became a routine. We would find little pockets of time together, each one filled with nervous laughter and hushed whispers. Each touch felt like a forbidden thrill, a rush of adrenaline that both excited and terrified me. One evening, after a particularly long day, we met again in a quiet park. The stars twinkled above us, and the air was cool and crisp. I sat beside Ethan on a bench, feeling the warmth radiating from him. Clara, can I be honest with you? He asked, his voice suddenly serious. I nodded, my heart pounding. Of course. I think about you a lot. More than I should, he confessed, searching my eyes for a reaction. You make me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. I felt a mix of joy and guilt. Ethan, this is all so complicated, I said, my voice trembling. I'm married. I shouldn't be here. I know, he replied, his gaze unwavering. But what we have, it's real. You can't deny that. His words hit me like a wave, crashing over my resolve. I wanted to deny it, to turn away from the truth, but deep down, I felt the connection we shared. It was both an escape from my reality and a painful reflection of everything I was missing. Every time we meet, I feel so happy, I admitted, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. But then I feel this deep guilt afterward. I'm betraying Mark. I don't want you to feel guilty, Ethan said gently, squeezing my hand. But you have to ask yourself what you truly want. What did I truly want? I had buried my desires for so long, pushed them aside to maintain my marriage. But as I sat there, holding Ethan's hand under the stars, I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered, my heart heavy with confusion. I can't keep lying to myself or to Mark. Clara, he said, his voice softening, you need to be honest about your feelings. You deserve to explore what makes you happy. His words lingered in the air, and I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I was at a crossroads, and I could feel the pressure building inside me. Each meeting brought joy, but also a deepening sense of guilt. How could I reconcile the happiness I felt with the reality of my marriage? That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I felt torn between two worlds, the love I had for Mark and the undeniable connection I shared with Ethan. Sleepless nights filled with self-doubt consumed me, and I began to question everything. Would I continue down this path, or was it time to confront the truth about my life, my marriage, and my heart? The day had arrived when I could no longer hide from the truth. I sat on the edge of our bed, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. Mark would be home any minute, and I knew I had to tell him everything. The weight of my secrets felt heavy, suffocating me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. When he walked through the door, his smile faded as he noticed my serious expression. Clara, is everything okay? He asked, concern etching lines on his face. I nodded, but my throat felt dry. Mark, we need to talk. His brows knitted together, and he sat down beside me. That sounds serious. What's going on? I turned to face him, my heart racing. I've been seeing someone. The words spilled out before I could stop them. I saw the shock wash over his face, and I felt my heart break at the sight. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan," I replied, my voice trembling. It started as just conversations, but it became more. I didn't want it to happen, but it did. As I spoke, I could see the pain in his eyes, a reflection of the hurt I had caused. "Why, Clara? Why would you do this?" Mark's voice cracked, and I felt tears prick at my eyes. "I felt lonely," I admitted, my voice breaking. "You've been so busy with work, and I felt like I was fading away. But that doesn't excuse what I did. I was wrong." Each word felt like a knife, cutting deeper into the illusion of our marriage. Mark looked away, his hands gripping the edge of the bed. "Do you love him?" he asked, his voice low and filled with pain. "I don't know," I replied honestly, my heart aching. "I don't want to love him. But he made me feel alive again, something I haven't felt in a long time. I didn't mean for it to go this far." The silence hung between us, thick and heavy. I could see the tears pooling in his eyes, and it broke my heart further. "Clara, I thought we had something special," he said, his voice trembling. "I thought we were happy." "I thought so too, Mark," I said, my words laced with regret. "But I lost myself somewhere along the way. I should have talked to you, but I didn't know how." "You didn't think I deserved to know?" he asked, his voice rising. I could hear the hurt and anger in his tone. "I was scared." I shouted, the words escaping before I could contain them. "I was scared of losing you, of what you would think of me. I thought if I kept it hidden, it wouldn't hurt you." Mark shook his head, disbelief painted across his features. "But hiding it has hurt me even more, Clara. You shattered my trust." "I know," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." The raw emotion of the moment hit me like a wave. I could see the impact of my choices reflected in his devastated eyes, and I felt a deep sense of loss. I had shattered the illusion of our marriage, and now I had to face the consequences. "Where do we go from here?" Mark asked, his voice resigned. "I don't know," I admitted, my heart heavy. "I need time to think, to figure out who I am and what I want. I've lost myself in this mess." "Time," he echoed, disbelief lacing his words. "You've already taken so much from me, Clara. How can I trust you again?" "I understand," I said, my voice softening. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just need some time to find clarity." Mark looked away, his face filled with sorrow. "I don't know if I can wait for you to find yourself. This is a lot to take in." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I know it is. I don't want to lose you, but I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I need to be honest with myself and with you." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I wish things were different, Clara. I wish you had come to me before it got this far." "So do I said, my heart aching. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is try to make things right moving forward." We sat in silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. The future felt uncertain, a fog of confusion and fear surrounding us. I realized I would need to take time for myself, to explore my heart and my desires without the weight of my past holding me back. "I'll give you space," Mark finally said, his voice heavy. "But I need you to be honest with me, Clara. No more secrets." "I promise," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll be honest. I owe you that much." As he stood to leave, I felt a deep sense of loss wash over me. I had broken something precious, and now I had to face the reality of my choices. I watched him walk away, knowing that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but it was a path I had to take. I needed to find clarity, to understand who I was, and what I truly wanted from life, independent of my past. The days that followed the confrontation with Mark felt like a blur. I was lost in a whirlwind of emotions, trying to find my footing after everything that had happened. It was clear I needed to embark on a journey of self-discovery, to understand who I was outside of my marriage. For too long, I had defined myself by my role as Mark's wife. Now, I had to find Clara again. I reached out to my friends, hoping they could help me navigate this new chapter of my life. One sunny afternoon, I met with Lily at our favorite cafe. As I sat across from her, the familiar warmth of our friendship began to ease some of my worries. "Clara, how are you doing?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "I'm still trying to process everything. It feels like my whole world has flipped upside down," I admitted, fiddling with my coffee cup. "You have to take it one day at a time. It's okay to feel lost," she said gently. "Have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist could really help." I nodded slowly. "I think I might need that. I have so many feelings I don't know how to sort through." Lily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than you realize. Allow yourself to feel everything. It's part of the healing process." Over the next few weeks, I began attending therapy sessions. Talking to someone outside my situation helped me articulate my feelings. I learned that it was okay to embrace my loneliness and vulnerability. In those moments of honesty, I started to grieve the loss of my marriage. "Clara, what do you want to achieve from this?" my therapist asked one afternoon. "I want to understand myself better," I replied, my voice shaky. "I want to know what I truly want in life." "That's a good start," she said, encouragingly. "You've been through a lot, and it's important to take time for yourself." As I continued my journey, I started to embrace my newfound independence. I took long walks in the park, rediscovered my love for painting, and even started reading books I had put aside for years. Each small step felt empowering, like I was slowly piecing my life back together. Then, one day, I ran into Ethan at the grocery store. My heart raced at the sight of him. He looked just as charming as ever, his smile lighting up the aisle. "Clara," he exclaimed, his eyes brightening. "It's great to see you. How have you been?" "Hi, Ethan," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been figuring things out." He stepped closer, his expression turning serious. "I've been thinking about you a lot. I hope you're okay." "I'm working on it," I said, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. "Can we talk somewhere?" We stepped outside, where the fresh air felt refreshing. I took a deep breath, unsure of how to approach the conversation. "I wanted to talk about us," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Our connection." "I've had time to think." Ethan looked at me, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Clara, I care about you. But I don't want to be the reason you're unhappy. You need to find your own happiness first." "I know that now," I replied, a wave of clarity washing over me. "You filled a void in my life, but I realized that you're not the solution to my problems. I need to focus on myself and what I truly want." Ethan nodded, his expression softening. "I respect that. I want you to be happy, with or without me. You deserve to find yourself first." Our conversation felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I understood that while Ethan had awakened something inside me, he was not the answer to my struggles. I needed to stand on my own, to redefine my dreams and desires. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of relief. I had taken a crucial step towards understanding my own heart. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I would face it with newfound strength. I was ready to embrace my identity as Clara, independent and whole, and I would find my way, one step at a time. The days turned into weeks, and as I settled into my new routine, I felt a flicker of hope. I knew I needed to talk to Mark. It was time for us to face the truth together. I had been avoiding this conversation, but I understood that we both needed closure, even if it felt uncomfortable. One evening, I invited Mark to meet me at a small park near our neighborhood. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow on everything around us. I watched the children play and couples walk hand in hand, and I felt a mix of fear and determination. When Mark arrived, he looked nervous. "Hey, Clara," he said, his voice low. "Hi, Mark." "Thanks for coming," I replied, my heart racing. We sat down on a bench, and for a moment, silence hung between us like a heavy blanket. I took a deep breath and decided to break the tension. "I think it's time we talk about everything that has happened." Mark nodded, his expression serious. "I agree. I've been thinking about it a lot too." I looked into his eyes, searching for the right words. "I know I hurt you. I want to be honest about my feelings and what led to my actions." "I appreciate that," Mark replied, looking down at his hands. "I think we both made mistakes." "Yes," I said softly. "I lost myself in our marriage. I forgot who I was and what I wanted. I thought being a good wife meant sacrificing my own happiness." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I got so caught up in work that I neglected you. I didn't see how alone you felt. I felt invisible sometimes," I admitted, tears welling up. "But I should have communicated that instead of seeking comfort elsewhere." "I wish we could have talked sooner," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I never wanted to lose you, Clara." "We can still try to heal," I said, my heart aching. "But it has to be different. We need to be open with each other." Mark looked at me, vulnerability in his eyes. "I want to work on this. I want to be better for you and for us." As we spoke, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were acknowledging our shortcomings, and it felt like a step toward healing. We talked about our dreams, the things we had put aside over the years. I shared my passion for painting, and he mentioned his love for hiking that he had abandoned. "I miss those things," I said, smiling through my tears. "I want to find joy in life again, even if it's just for myself." "Me too," Mark replied, his eyes lighting up. "Let's make a plan. Let's do things that make us happy, whether together or apart." After a long conversation, we made an agreement to work on our communication. It was a small step, but it felt significant. We both knew it would take time, but we were willing to try. As we stood to leave, I felt lighter. I hugged Mark tightly, feeling the warmth of our shared memories. "Thank you for being open with me," I whispered. "Thank you for being brave enough to talk," he replied, pulling back to look into my eyes. "No matter what happens, I want you to be happy." I smiled, realizing that while our future was uncertain, we were taking steps toward understanding each other again. I walked home that night, feeling a sense of freedom. I was learning to embrace my independence, and with that came a newfound strength. I had started to rediscover who I was. I painted more, poured my heart into every brushstroke, and felt my spirit slowly heal. In the days that followed, I continued to focus on personal growth. I joined a local art class, where I met new people and shared my passion. Each stroke of the brush was a reminder that I was reclaiming my identity. I learned to celebrate my independence. I no longer sought validation from others. Instead, I found joy within myself. I began to understand the importance of authentic connections, whether with myself, Mark, or those around me. My journey was far from over, but I felt ready to face whatever came next. I knew that true fulfillment comes from within, and I was determined to embrace this new chapter of my life with open arms. Share this story if you believe that open communication and personal growth can heal even the deepest wounds. Leave a comment about how a heartfelt conversation has transformed your life, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.